Same kind of message written to the same guy at the Times, Arnold Greiner. It's possible someone got hold of those other emails, but this feels like her to me. You've heard of Carmen DeBruzzi, right? The chef? Of course. She's got her own show. I watch it occasionally. I just don't cook. Trattoria d'Abruzzi was a flavor-of-the-month restaurant in Hollywood, an A-list dinner and after-hours place. More important, Galetta knew, Carmen DeBruzzi had a very popular syndicated show in which she cooked for her beautiful husband and her two perfect children. Everything was a little too perfect for Galetta's taste, but she did watch the show sometimes. Galetta shook her head. God damn it! DeBruzzi's just this killer's type. Have you found her yet? That's the kicker, Hatfield told her. She's fine. No problem. A little freaked out, maybe, but okay. Same with her family. We've got a unit at her house already. Check it out. Whoever wrote that email never sent it or even finished it. Jean Galetta's head bobbed again. What the hell? She didn't send it? Maybe she got spooked for whatever reason, wasn't thinking clearly, and just left. Maybe she didn't like the coffee here. I sure don't. Galetta stood up and looked over the assembled customers and staff again. Or maybe she's still here. You really think so? Actually, no fucking way. She's not dumb. Still, I want to talk to every one of these stinks. This place is a closed box until further notice. Do some initial screening, but no one leaves without going through me personally. Understand? No one. Not for any reason. Not even if they have a note from their mom. Yeah, okay, Hatfield answered. I got it. As Hatfield walked away, Jean Galetta heard him mutter something like, "Calm down," under his breath. Typical. Male cops tended to respond one way to a man's orders and another to a woman's. She shrugged it off and turned her attention to the half-finished email on the screen. Half-finished? What the hell was that all about? Chapter 39.
To A. Greiner at LATimes.com from Mary Smith. To Carmen DeBruzzi. You worked at your restaurant until 3 in the morning last night, didn't you? Busy girl. Then you walked 2 long blocks by yourself to your car. That's what you thought, isn't it? That you were all alone? But you weren't, Carmen. I was right there on the sidewalk with you. I didn't even try to be careful. You made it easy for me. Not too bright. So into yourself. Me. Maybe you don't watch the news. Or maybe you just ignore it. Maybe you don't care that someone is out there looking for people just like you. It was almost like you wanted me to kill you, which is good, I guess, because that's what I wanted too. Watching you, trying to be you, I had to wonder if you ever told your 2 darling children to look both ways when they crossed the street. You sure didn't set a good example for Anthony and Martina last night. You never looked around, not once. Which is too bad for all of you, the whole damn pretty-as-a-picture family as seen on your cooking show. There's no telling when your children might end up alone on the curb without you, is there? Now they'll have to learn that important safety lesson from someone else. After you got...
Chapter 40. It ended just like that. In mid-sentence. Even if it hadn't, this was a whole new wrinkle in the case. Carmen DeBruzzi wasn't dead, and they had the death threat note. That was something positive, right? Jean Galetta squeezed her eyes shut, trying to process the new information quickly and correctly. Maybe Mary Smith drafted her messages ahead of time and then finalized them post-homicide. But why leave this one here? Would she do it on purpose? Was this even her at all? Might not be. Jesus Christ, the questions never ended on this one. So where the hell were the answers? How about just one answer for starters? She thought about Alex Cross. Something he'd said in that book of his. Keep asking until you find the keystone, the one question at the heart of it all. Then you can start working your way back out again. That's when you start finding answers. The one question. The keystone. What the hell was it? Well, 6 hours later, it was still a mystery for Galetta. Just after dark, she finally let the last of the morning's customers go home. 5 people had given 5 different eyewitness accounts about who was sitting at the computer in question. The rest of them had no clue. No one Detective Galetta spoke to struck her as remotely suspicious, but all 26 would require follow-up. The paperwork alone was more than she wanted to think about, now or ever. To no one's surprise, Mary Smith's credit card turned out to be hot. It belonged to an 80-year-old woman in Sherman Oaks who didn't even realize it was gone, a Mrs. Debbie Green. Nothing else had been charged on the card. There was no paper trail, no anything. She's careful and she's organized, for such an obvious nutcase. Galetta asked Brett, the manager, for a full-strength espresso. From here it was back to the office, where she would sort through the day's events while they were fresh in her memory. Her neighbor said he'd let the dog out. The Chinese place along the way to her office said 20 minutes for pickup. Life was good, no? No. She wondered if she'd be home before midnight, and even then, if she'd be able to sleep. Probably not, on both counts. So what was the one question she needed to ask? Where was that keystone? Or was Alex Cross just full of shit? Chapter 41. She never knew what she wanted, Sugar. Maybe she still doesn't. I like Christine, but she was never the same after what happened in Jamaica. She has to move on, and so do you. Sampson and I were holed up at Zinni's, a favorite neighborhood dive. B.B. King's I Done Got Wise was wailing on the jukebox. Nothing but the blues would do tonight. Not for me, anyway. What the place lacked in cheeriness, it made up for in Raphael, a bartender who knew us by name and had a heavy pour. I contemplated the scotch in front of me. I was trying to recall if it was my 3rd or 4th. Man, I was feeling tired. I remembered a line from one of the Indiana Jones movies. It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. Christine's not the point, though, is she, John? I looked sideways at Sampson. The point is little Alex. Ali. That's how he calls himself. He's already his own person. He patted me on the top of my head. The point is right here on your skull, Sugar. Now you listen to me. He waited until I sat up and gave him my full attention. Then his gaze slowly drifted up to the ceiling. He shut his eyes and grimaced. Shit. I forgot what I was gonna say. Too bad, too. I was gonna make you feel a whole lot better. I laughed in spite of myself. Sampson always knew when to go light with me. It had been like that since we were 10 years old and growing up in D.C. together. Well, next best thing, then, he said. He motioned to Raphael for 2 more. You never know what's going to happen, I said, partly to myself. When you're in love, there's no guarantee. Truth, Sampson said. If you'd told me I'd have a kid, ever, I would have laughed. Now here I am with a 3-month-old. It's crazy. And at the same time, it could all change again. Just like that. He snapped his fingers hard, the sound popping in my ears. Sampson has the biggest hands of anyone I know. I'm 6'3", not exactly chiseled, but not too shabby, and he makes me look slight. Billy and I are good together, no question about it, he went on, rambling but making sense in his way. That doesn't mean it can't all go crazy someday. For all I know, 10 years from now, she'll be throwing my clothes out on the lawn. You never know. Nah. My girl wouldn't do that to me. Not my Billy, Samson said. And we both laughed. We sat and drank in silence for a few minutes. Even without conversation, the mood darkened. "When are you going to see little Alex again?" he asked, his voice soft. Ali. I like that. "Next week, John. I'll be out in Seattle. We've got to finalize the visitation agreement." I hated that word. Visitation. That's what I had with my own son? Every time I talked about it out loud, I wanted to punch something. A lamp, a window, glass. "How the hell am I going to do this?" I asked Samson. "Seriously. How can I face Christine, face Alex, and act like everything's okay? Every time I see him now, my heart's going to be aching. Even if I can pull it off and seem okay, that's no way to be with your kids." "He's going to be fine," Samson said insistently. "Alex, no way you're going to raise messed up kids. Besides, look at us. You feel like you turned out okay? You feel like I turned out okay?" I smiled at him. "You got a better example to use?" Samson ignored the joke. "You and I didn't exactly have every advantage, and we're just fine. Last I checked, you don't shoot up, you don't disappear, and you don't lay a finger on your kids. I dealt with all that, and I ended up the second finest cop in the D.C. force." He stopped and smacked his head. "Oh, wait. You're a lame-ass federal desk humper now. I guess that makes me D.C.'s finest." Suddenly, I felt overwhelmed by how much I missed little Alex, but also by John's friendship. "Thanks for being here," I said. He put an arm around my shoulders and jostled me hard. "Where else am I going to be?" Chapter 42. I woke up suddenly to a slightly bemused flight attendant staring down at me. I remembered that it was the next morning and I was on a United jet back to L.A. Her curious expression indicated she had just asked a question. "I'm sorry," I said. "Could you please put up your tray table? Put your seat forward. We'll be landing in Los Angeles in just a few minutes." Before I had drifted off, I'd been thinking about James Truscott and how he'd suddenly appeared in my life. Coincidence? I tended not to believe in it. So I'd called a researcher and friend at Quantico and asked her to get me some more information on Truscott. Monty Donnelly had promised that soon I'd know more about Truscott than even I wanted to know. I gathered up my papers. It wasn't a good idea to leave them out like that, and not like me. It was also unlike me to sleep on flights. Everything was a little upside down these days. Just a little, right? My Mary Smith file had grown considerably thicker in just a few days. The recent false alarm was a conundrum. I wasn't even sure that Mary Smith was behind that one. Looking at the murder reports, I had a picture of someone who was growing more confident in her work, and definitely more aggressive. She was moving in on her targets, literally. The first site, the Patricia Bennett murder, was a public space. The next time was outside of Antonia Schiffman's home. Now, all indications were that Mary Smith had spent part of the night inside Marty Lowenstein Bell's house before eventually killing her in the pool. Anyway, here I was back in L.A. again, getting off a plane, renting a car, even though I probably could have asked Agent Page to pick me up. Looks-wise, the L.A. Bureau field office put D.C. headquarters to shame. Instead of the claustrophobic maze I was used to back east, this was 9 stories of open floor plan, polished glass, and lots of natural light. From the cubicle they had assigned me on the 15th floor, I had a great view of the Getty Museum